This might just be the best 2D Mario I've ever played in my life. Hey there, all you beautiful guardians of the glaze. Welcome back to the Milky Donut. If you're new here, this is the Milky Donut. We do all things video games, movies, and pop culture. And if you're not new here, are you a model? Because I can sense your beauty through the screen. Well, before we yet again jump back into our video game time travel machine, as always, I would like to mention that I do have a goal of reaching 10,000 subscribers as quickly as I can, and we are so close. So if you could go ahead and like this video, leave the glaziest of comments, hype it if you can, and subscribe if you think it's worthy of the algorithm. As always, shout out to the current subscriber of the week, Mr. Alt2, and stick around until the end of the video for the reveal of the brand new subscriber of the week, because it could very well be you. And with all that nonsense out of the way, let's jump back into our video game time travel machine and play the most Mario-ist Mario game to ever have Mario'd. After finishing Super Mario Bros. 3, if you haven't seen that video, you should check that out, but my entire perspective on the Mario series changed, because Mario 3 felt like the reverse culmination of everything I had ever seen in the Mario games, at least in the Mario games that I had played up until that point. And what I mean by reverse culmination is the oldest Mario game I had played before that was Mario 64, and the oldest Mario game I had ever actually beaten before that was Mario Galaxy. So it was wild seeing all of the things that I thought were newer mechanics and gameplay designs present here years before those games were ever even a concept. It consistently introduced new worlds, new power-ups, new enemies, and new mechanics at a pace that never seemed to slow down. Even playing it decades later, it's still one of the greatest platformers ever made in my opinion. So I pretty much assumed Super Mario World would be Mario 3, but prettier and with some more fleshed out worlds and mechanics. While that is certainly true, I couldn't have been any more wrong in thinking that that's all it would be. Super Mario World doesn't bombard you with a million overwhelming ideas, forgetting the ones that its predecessor began. Instead, it refines them. According to my research, which I always do, I discovered just how much pressure Nintendo was under in 1991. The NES had become one of the most successful consoles ever created, largely because Mario himself had become synonymous with video games. He was the guy, the Mario of the brothers. The original Super Mario Bros. Had helped revive the industry after the North American video game crash. Super Mario Bros. 3 somehow managed to improve on nearly every aspect of its predecessor tenfold, becoming one of the most celebrated games on the system. Now Nintendo was launching an entirely new console, and Nintendo these days is no stranger to achieving massive success when they need it most, just to fumble the bag with their next system. The Super Nintendo couldn't simply be faster than the NES, it needed to feel like the future. For many people, Super Mario World would be the first game they ever played on Nintendo's new hardware. It wasn't enough for the game to be good, it had to convince millions of people that the jump to 16-bit gaming was worth making. That meant Nintendo couldn't just release another Mario game like its predecessors, as good as they may have been. They needed to create the definitive Mario experience. And did they? Oh yeah, they did. Now, I may be 35 years late to the party, but better late than never, eh? Forget about it, because what's remarkable is that they didn't even accomplish this by making the game dramatically bigger, which is what most sequels to successful franchises do nowadays. Just make it bigger, spend more money, make it cost more. Well, it's not exactly that easy. They accomplished it by making nearly every single individual mechanic better. Within seconds of starting the game, everything feels so crispy. Oh my god, Mario accelerates so smoothly and his jumps are easier to control in a way that doesn't affect the difficulty in a negative way. Landing on the tiniest of platforms feels forgiving in a way, while running through levels develops an almost rhythmic quality once I became comfortable with the controls. Even if you've never touched Super Mario World before, it rarely feels like the game is giving you any unfair pushback. Instead, it feels like it wants you to focus more on the flow and fun rather than grueling difficulty. And that's a deceptively difficult thing to achieve. A lot of platformers from the early 90s are technically challenging, a few of which I've definitely experienced during this series, but many of them also take that level of challenge so far that it can sometimes, not always, but sometimes feel like there are moments of unfairness. Some have slippery movement, others ask for an extreme level of pinpoint precision while sometimes giving you awkward controls. Super Mario World strikes a perfect balance that few games, at least that I've ever played, have ever matched. Mario has weight but doesn't feel heavy. He's extremely responsive but not uncontrollably fast. You begin trusting the controls almost immediately, and that trust becomes the foundation for everything else the game asks you to do. The best way I can put it is that it feels like the most Mario game to ever have Mario'd, and that's a good thing. One thing I noticed right away after starting my playthrough was how alive Dinosaur Land feels, and I mean, I do like dinosaurs to an autistic level, what can I say, but compared to previous Mario games, at least the 1.5 that I've played, this world has so much more personality, and Super Mario 3 was no chud when it came to personality. Of course, it's still colorful and whimsical, but the overworld cohesiveness that Mario 3 started is perfected here. Dinosaur Land feels like an actual place with forests, caves, mountains, lakes, haunted houses, bridges, castles, lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my god, the overworld becomes an entire puzzle itself, again perfecting what Mario 3 started. Every path hints that there's something hidden just beyond your reach. Unexplored routes constantly tempt your curiosity, secret roads disappear into forests while tiny islands sit isolated in the ocean. Long before you discover your first secret exit, the game quietly teaches you that there's more here than meets the eye. And that's one of Nintendo's greatest strengths throughout Super Mario World. Again, as we've seen time and time again in this series, the game rarely tells you anything outright. It encourages observation. Maybe it's an oddly placed pipe or a ledge that goes unusually high, coins floating in a suspicious pattern, or a keyhole that you've never seen before. Super Mario World trusts that you as the player will naturally explore just out of curiosity, and when you do, you're almost always rewarded, which is the entire point of exploration. That sense of discovery is absolutely everywhere. One of the best examples comes in the ghost houses. On paper, they're just another level theme, but in practice, they're unlike anything else in the game. Instead of simply running towards the goal, these stages force you to slow down, experiment, and pay attention to your surroundings even more so. Hidden doors loop you back into earlier rooms, exits aren't always where you expect them to be, and sometimes reaching the end of the stage isn't even the real objective. I mean, they're really less like traditional platforming levels and more like miniature puzzle boxes, and you know your boy is a sucker for some good puzzle action. Nintendo constantly alternates between these different types of challenges because one second you're sprinting through open grasslands, and the next you're navigating claustrophobic caves, hopping across collapsing platforms, weaving through underwater caverns, and solving environmental puzzles inside haunted mansions with great atmosphere. The game never allows one idea to overstay its welcome either, or get stale before introducing another, but it also doesn't dump an idea 2 seconds after it gives it to you, and that's something I didn't even know that I appreciated when talking about Mario games. Many modern platformers try to stay fresh by introducing dozens of entirely new mechanics or overly complicate things. Super Mario World takes the opposite approach. It introduces one mechanic, explores every single interesting possibility that it offers, and then quietly moves on before you have time to grow tired of it, without ever taking away the core simplicity that makes up the game design. And that's an incredibly disciplined style of design. Perhaps the greatest example of that philosophy is Yoshi. Yeah, you knew we had to talk about our boy Yoshi. It's almost impossible to imagine Mario without him now, but there was a time when Yoshi simply didn't exist. In fact, Miyamoto had reportedly wanted Mario to ride a dinosaur all the way back during the development of the original Super Mario Bros., but of course hardware limitations made that idea impossible. It wasn't until the SNES arrived that the team could finally bring that concept to life, and boy, what a concept it is! What surprised me most wasn't that Yoshi is fun, because I knew that would be the case. It's how he's integrated so naturally into nearly every part of the game. He isn't just a temporary power-up that's shoehorned in to shake up the gameplay. He changes how the entire world feels to navigate. Suddenly, enemies that once seemed threatening become opportunities because his tongue lets you safely eliminate them from a distance. His ability to swallow different colored shells opens entirely new strategies. Blue shells grant flight. Red shells let him spit fireballs, yellow shells create devastating shockwaves. Even sacrificing Yoshi for an extra jump adds another layer of moral decision making that wasn't present before. And the genius of it is that none of it feels mandatory. You can complete huge portions of the game without relying on Yoshi at all, but if you choose to master him, the game rewards you with entirely new ways to approach familiar levels. And that, my dear Guardians, is a recurring theme throughout Super Mario World. Nintendo almost never forces experimentation. Instead, it gives you the option to play how you want to. Whether that's discovering hidden exits, learning advanced cape techniques, carrying shells throughout multiple stages, or uncovering entirely optional worlds, the game constantly rewards curiosity over obligation. And I really do think that that's one of the biggest reasons Super Mario World still feels so perfect today. It never stops inviting you to look just a little bit closer, but it also never puts an artificial roadblock to make you do so. When it comes to the controls, every new mechanic follows a pattern. First, the game introduces it in a safe environment, letting you experiment with it. Finally, it starts combining that mechanic with all the others until you're using everything that you've learned without even realizing it. We can take the spin jump for example, because it completely changes how you interact with the world. Suddenly, spinning saw blades become temporary platforms, and rotating blocks can be broken apart to reveal hidden passageways. Again, certain enemies require completely different approaches than they did before. Nintendo never pauses to explain every possible use, it just places opportunities in front of you. And yes, I know, the manual, I understand, but that level of confidence in the player is everywhere here. The same goes for the Cape Feather, which might honestly be my favorite power-up in the entire series, because at first glance, it looks like the natural successor to Mario 3's Super Leaf. Both allow Mario to glide through the air and eventually take flight, but the similarities end there. The cape feels less like a simple power-up and more like a movement system all on its own. Learning to fly proficiently actually takes practice. The game teaches you how to build enough speed for takeoff, how to maintain altitude by rhythmically pulling back on the control pad, how to dive to regain momentum, and eventually how to weave through entire levels without ever touching the ground. It's surprisingly technical without ever becoming intimidating. The amazing part is that, again, none of this is required. You can play Super Mario World almost entirely from the ground if that's how you enjoy platformers. But if you invest time into mastering the cape, the game suddenly becomes a different game. Entire sections can be bypassed, causing exploration to take on a completely different rhythm. It's the perfect example of rewarding skill without punishing players who simply want to reach the end of the stage in a traditional way. I think that's one of the defining characteristics of Super Mario World. And the more comfortable you become with Mario's movement, the more the game gives back to you. Long jumps that once seemed impossible become routine. Narrow platforming becomes second nature, and secret exits that originally looked unreachable suddenly feel obvious. It's one of those rare games where your own improvement is just as satisfying as collecting another power-up. That philosophy extends into every level in Dinosaur Land. Instead of simply creating more difficult stages as the game progresses, Nintendo continually introduces fresh ideas before building on them later. One level might focus on bouncing between giant enemies, another revolves around climbing fences while dodging Koopas on the opposite side. Castles famously introduce moving platforms over rivers of lava, and forest stages begin playing tricks on your sense of direction. Very few ideas are repeated enough to become stale. In fact, one of the most remarkable things about Super Mario World is just how restrained it is. Again, disciplined game design. Nintendo could have very easily stretched many of these mechanics across several worlds, but instead, they often dedicate a single memorable stage to an idea before moving on forever. And the result is a game that almost never feels repetitive, despite reusing many of the same enemies throughout the adventure. And of course, there are the secrets. Hidden blocks and pathways have existed since the original Super Mario Bros. Secret warp zones weren't new either, but Super Mario World takes those ideas and builds an entire progression system around them. Nearly every time I thought I had seen everything a level had to offer, I discovered another exit. Sometimes it was a hidden key tucked behind an alternate route. Other times it was an entirely different goalpost hidden far from the main path. Suddenly, the overworld map would change, new routes would appear, entire regions I had never even realized existed would become accessible. It was so addictive and blew my mind, to be honest, because I didn't even know that any of this was a thing. The Star Road, I think, is my favorite example because when you first discover those mysterious star portals scattered across Dinosaur Land, they already feel like you've stumbled across something mysterious. They function as shortcuts across the overworld, making travel dramatically easier, but they also hint at something even larger hiding beneath the surface. Eventually, those hidden paths lead to the special world. Even decades later, in 2026, unlocking it feels like discovering something you weren't supposed to find. The levels become noticeably more difficult. Every stage demands precise platforming and a complete understanding of everything the game has taught you up to this point. Completing them even changes Dinosaur Land itself, subtly altering enemies and parts of the overworld as a permanent reminder that you've conquered the game's greatest challenge. It's one of the coolest rewards I've seen in a platformer, or shoot, a game in general, because it acknowledges your accomplishment without a lengthy cutscene or a meaningless trophy notification. The world simply remembers what you did and rewards you for it, but with nuance. It trusts that discovering something on your own is rewarding enough. It's the kind of game that makes you want to replay earlier stages, not because you have to, but because you can't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, 100% you definitely missed something the first time through. The controls are flawless, the level design constantly rewards curiosity, and every mechanic builds naturally onto the last without overstaying its welcome. It's one of those rare games where nothing feels wasted. Nintendo didn't just create another Mario game, they perfected the formula. You know, the formula that we all know and love, but they did it the best here. And I had way too much fun playing it, and that is why I think Super Mario World is the best 2D Mario that I've ever played. And to be honest, I mean, I haven't played them all, but this has to be up, it has to be up there, right? You let me know down in the comments below. And with that, we come to the end of our time travel journey. As always, I had an absolute blast playing Super Mario World, man. It's crazy that one can have his mind blown so consistently, but here we are. But do you prefer old games or new games? Let me know in the comments below, and if you want to see more of this, feel free to drop what you'd like to see next in the comments. Yes, even if you've already commented your request 10 times, don't be afraid to comment them again because it's possible it got lost in the comments, and I do want to see all of the recommendations that I can. The brand new subscriber of the week is none other than Sheriff Sour Hour. I might be saying that wrong. I think it's Sheriff Sour Hour, which is very creative spelling, because you, my dear guardian, constantly glaze the channel, engage with everything that I upload, and give great recommendations. Thank you for all of your kind words. As always, don't forget to like, comment, hype, and subscribe to become a guardian of the glaze, and I'll see you next time on the Milky Donut.